You're watching The Breakfast Club.
Yep, it's the world's most dangerous morning show, The Breakfast Club. Charlamagne the God, Angela Yee, DJ Envy is off today, and we got a special guest in the building. I've been watching this man's movement for a long time via social media, and then it started translating.
I believe we all have been
the
watching.
television. Yeah, we all have. DeRay is here.
It's good to be here.
Mckesson, right?
Mckesson. Is it DeRay or DeRay?
It's DeRay.
DeRay.
Are you Irish?
I think we're all mixed with a little bit of something.
Yeah, I'm a McKelvey.
Okay.
Yeah, so I got a little
Is that
bit.
your last name?
Yeah, so I got a little Irish in me.
Yeah.
So tell them your titles, DeRay.
DeRay.
DeRay. DeRay, I'm sorry.
That's why
you kept getting confused with the comedian. He's been supposed to be here, but they kept booking DeRay Davis instead of DeRay.
We were like, DeRay Davis is coming.
I'm like,
the
DeRay
emails that
again?
kept going back, they were like, the comedian? And we were like, no, not the comedian. I get a lot of his tweets, too. So we follow each other just so we can like sing that.
Hey, man, this tweet's for you.
I know, it's like real. So I'm an activist, civil rights activist,
Gotcha.
Protester, was a teacher. I taught here in New York City. I taught 6th grade math in East New York, Brooklyn, and then worked at the Harlem Children's Zone, opened up an after-school center in Baltimore, trained teachers, worked in 2 public school systems. But most recently, for the last 19 months, I've been a part of the Black Lives Matter movement with so many other people, which is focused on ending police violence, but also talking about the structural conditions in America that make racism thrive, and that we need to do something about it.
So how did that happen? Because it just seems like all of a sudden one day it was this DeRay guy on Twitter that was just very active and vocal. It was almost like you just quit your job and whatever you was doing, it was like, I'm going to go do this.
And I'm sure that teaching in public schools, especially in East New York, and seeing what students are lacking from the school system probably had a lot to do with that also.
Yeah. So, I was the senior director of human capital in Minneapolis Public Schools when Mike Brown got killed. So I managed like all staffing for the school district. It was August 16th. I was sitting on my couch. It was 1 o'clock in the morning, and I was like, I want to go. I want to go see what's happening. So I saw it on Twitter, saw it on TV, and I got in the car, drove 9 hours, didn't know anybody in St. Louis, ended up there. And that was sort of the beginning for me. Second night I was in St. Louis was the first night that I got tear gassed, and that like changed everything. It was just like, this is not the America that people should have to grow up in and live in. And I, like so many other people, our lives changed. I think about Twitter as the friend that's always awake.
Right.
And I needed to like explain what was going on, and like that became real for me. So I had 800 followers in August of 2014. I have about 300,000 now, and like that has we've used social media as a way to like mobilize and organize and tell this story.
So you just said, forget the teaching, I'm going to go hit the ground running.
It was like not forget working in school systems, but it was so much of my work had been about making sure that kids have great teachers every day and like every kid gets a great education. And then it was this moment of like, you got to be alive to learn, right? That like Mike will never know a college professor, Tamir will never know a high school teacher. There's something so fundamental about the conditions in this country that we need to address with regard to state violence. And I was like, I'll change my work.
Why do you think people don't like to hear about black issues? It's like everybody else can talk about the problems that's going on in their communities, but as soon as we start speaking up, then it's an issue.
You guys need to stop complaining.
Yeah, stop complaining. You're race baiting.
You have everything in front of you.
You're
and
racist.
You still want more. I've heard people say things like that. I've heard people get upset when you say Black Lives Matter and they say all lives matter.
Yeah, I think that this country has always struggled with the centering of blackness and black struggle, even though we know that black is what's cool in America, that what black people decide to talk about is like what the country talks about, unless it's about justice. We also know that the privilege of whiteness means that white is seen as normal in this country, right? That like from Band-Aids to Barbie dolls to everything else, that white has this normative function and that blackness becomes a deviation from that. I think people are also like afraid of the outcome of the justice conversation, right? That like if we actually talk about race and racism, that should lead to real action to change the conditions in this country for black people. And I think some people benefit. So a lot of people benefit from the status quo and don't want that threatened. I think the movement threatens the status quo in a way that people didn't anticipate. People weren't critiquing the police a year ago, but now like the media, everybody's sort of saying like this isn't okay, and that's real power.
Do you think people also don't want to deal with the karma of their ancestors? Because like acknowledging that there is real problems in the black community, that black people aren't treated fairly, is acknowledging, yes, my ancestors really did something wrong.
Yeah, yes, and that they have to do something about it, right?
Yeah.
That like you are benefiting from a legacy of oppression, and like you have a responsibility to do something to change those conditions, right? That like black people were slavery was unpaid labor times 10 zillion, and so the wealth in this country, the racial wealth gap is just so deep. So there are white Americans who have a ton of wealth, not because they necessarily worked hard, but because it's rooted in inequity.
Is BLM an actual organization? That's the other thing I wonder about. Because I know a couple people. Like I know you. I know Netta. I guess Sean King, but y'all kicked him out. Yeah, like, what is it? An actual organization?
So the movement is bigger than any one person,
Okay.
any organization. When I think about how it started, the people in St. Louis like rose up on August 9th, 10th, 11th, and like they founded this space and made this work. The hashtag has been a rallying cry for people, and we obviously know that. And there is an organization that has a name that is synonymous with the hashtag. There are also so many organizations in this space that like continue to push this work. And what's real is that you don't need to be a part of an organization to do good work, right? If you acknowledge that there's a problem in your community, you can find people who agree with you and just start pressing, and that's really powerful. And what we saw in Ferguson is that people used social media as a way to like organize in new ways.
Right. Now let's talk about Beyonce and the whole Super Bowl and now the fallout from that. Now
Beyonce follows you.
She does.
Woohoo!
You're so funny.
Now I can see that cops are actually boycotting her concerts and saying they're not going to protect her. They're not going to, show up and make sure Beyonce is safe. What do you think about things like that and about her performance and how police are responding and how some people are saying, oh, she's anti-police?
Yeah, so art is a powerful reflection of what's happening and also can help us imagine new possibilities. I think Formation did it was risky for her, and I think that it serves as a powerful entrance for other entertainers to say, like, you can talk about tough topics, you can talk about race. She stood on top of a police car sinking in the ground. You're like, nobody thought she'd do that, and she did it, and that was a real risk, but that was also real, right? That, like, people across the country, the police have killed nearly 3 people every day in 2016. The police killed somebody in all states.
Not even just black people. People. That's why I don't understand why more of America's not outraged by this. How Martin Luther King Jr. said, the injustice anywhere, the threat to justice everywhere. Yeah. This isn't supposed to happen.
It's deep. So I think that she rightly was recognizing the crisis that was happening and using her art to talk about it. It doesn't matter. Beyonce will survive these police boycotts.
Right.
And I'm hopeful that her image will help, or what she's done will help other entertainers say, I can use my art to talk about tough topics.
It's just disappointing that people got the wrong message.
I don't think they got the wrong message. I think
because they think she's
anti-police,
but that's not even what she was saying at all. Period. In her video, her message was not, okay, we can't stand police officers. It was like, we don't condone police officers attacking our people.
Yeah, basically. And I think people are threatened by the power of Beyonce, right? That like she has this incredible platform. She did it at the Super Bowl of all places. She's talking about Malcolm X and they're in the 60s garb with afros. I think that threatened people's sense of comfort in the status quo. And I think that that's where we're seeing the backlash too. And I think that to her credit, she has withstood it and just said, she's selling boycott Beyonce t-shirts. And it's like, she gets it. And I'm hopeful that it'll be a powerful model for other entertainers.
Has she ever DM'd you?
No.
You're lying, D-Ray. There's no way Beyonce followed you just to follow. Has
do you
she
follow
ever
her back?
Just to DM?
Of course.
I don't want to know what she said. She said just a B emoji, just a black fist.
Are you part of the Beehive?
Did you know
you are too? All of us are.
Yeah, we are. Yeah.
You knew when Lemonade was dropping, didn't you?
I know that she is committed to this work.
Yeah.
And I know that she is using her platform to really push messages that are risky, that are historically risky, but she has a platform to do it. And like I said, I'm hopeful that like other people will see this and be like, I can use my art too. And some people are like Jesse Williams. You think about Harrison Barnes.
We just met Jesse Williams up
Jesse
here.
was up here yesterday.
He was with Andrew Martinez. Yeah.
He's got a documentary coming.
That's why I was in town. It just screened. Yeah. So I think that's powerful. The movement has also opened up a lot of space to talk about identity. The complexity of Black identity, to talk about sexuality, to talk about the trans community, to talk about things in public that we've not been able to talk about before. When I think about protest at its root, I think, is this idea of telling the truth in public, that we stood in streets to use our bodies to tell the truth that Mike should be alive, and Rakia, and Tamir, and John, and Ayanna. We disrupted board meetings and commissions to tell the truth that they weren't using their institutional power in ways that were important to people's lives. And I think that it's also opened up space to talk about identity, that like Blackness is not just one thing, that Blackness is so rich and so deep. And I think that's important.
Well, one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you too is because I watch you and I'm like, yo, this guy's got to be mentally strong, because not only did you take on the cause of, just your own Blackness, you're openly gay, right? Yeah. So like, what's harder, being Black in America or being gay in America, and how complicated is it to be both?
Yeah. So I don't think of it in terms of like a competition. It's important to me that I get to show up in the fullness of who I am, like wherever I am, right? That's real. we know that you can see my blackness, like when I can't hide it. It is here. I don't have to talk about it. Like you experience that, and I think that there's something visceral about that that just makes it different in America, right? That, like no matter if I have on a dress shirt or a hoodie or whatever, like I'm a black man.
Still black.
That means something different, right? My sexuality is something that you often have to have an entrance into, right? Like we got to talk about it, or we talk about love, and I think that the space has opened up where we can. There's more ability to talk about identity, and like that's powerful. The day that it came out that I was out in the New York Times Magazine, people call me all day from 9 a.m. to midnight on Twitter, and like that isn't kind or nice or fun. But I will say that I've seen so many people have conversations about identity in ways that they haven't before that are really powerful. I think about the trans community. I worry so much about the bathroom bill because people talk like it's not about bathrooms, right? It is about saying that identity is really
your identity
complex.
of your gender identity.
Yeah, and people talk. It's like, what are you doing in bathrooms?
Because for some reason, people think, this means that people are gonna pretend to be this and sneak into the other.
That's what I worry about.
That's what you guys.
I don't worry
even
about
see it
transgenders.
like that.
I worry about those sick predators who are going to take advantage of that law and pretend to be
they
trans.
won't. But
to
like,
do that.
what is happening in bathrooms? I keep asking people like, what are y'all doing in bathrooms?
Now I've seen 3 stories since this case happened. There was 2 that happened a couple years ago, but the guys just got arrested. But one just happened yesterday. I saw, and I'm like, okay, this is some fear mongering going on.
Yeah, it's just not like when I go in the bathroom, I'm like going in the bathroom to handle my business and I'm leaving. Like it's not a club, it's not a party, I'm not handing out business cards. What are people thinking?
But you're normal, DeRay. I'm talking about these sickos who just want to go in there and get a smell.
But it's not fair to attach that to the conversation about people's identity, right?
Sickos are going to go into whatever bathroom. It doesn't matter.
And if you're worried about strangers around your kids, you're worried about them regardless, right? So like when I think about when I'm with my niece and nephew, if I'm worried about a stranger, I'm going to follow them. I'm going to go with them into the bathroom.
You bring them in the bathroom with
anyway,
you. You don't let them go to the bathroom by themselves anyway.
Right. It has nothing to do with people's identities. And I worry that sometimes it's easy to be afraid of things that we don't know well, right? Like if you don't know somebody who's trans, or if you aren't familiar with the trans community,
that is a fact.
People get really nervous, but you're like, what is happening in the bathroom? Right. People talk about the bathroom and stuff, and that's just so wild to me. So I'm hopeful that the space opens up where we can like have real conversations about this, because these are like real people's lives,
See, this is my problem. I feel like local government and federal government failed the people. I feel like North Carolina local government failed transgenders because they shouldn't have put a target on their back. Let them do whatever they was doing before. They shouldn't have to show no ID and let them use whatever bathrooms they were using before. And I think the U.S. government did an injustice when they just announced, hey, you can use whatever bathroom you identify with.
Why is that an injustice?
Because it opened the door for the predators, not the transgenders, the sickos, to be like, oh, word, so all I got to do is put on a dress, or I can just walk in there and say I identify as a woman?
Yeah, but it's not, what the government said is that identity is not just about like the clothes you wear. Right? It's like how you identify as your gender.
So I can go in a woman's bathroom.
If you put on a wig and a dress, you probably could get away with it.
Do you identify
and you know
as
what?
No, but that's my point. I could pretend to identify just to go in a woman's bathroom.
Yeah, but people in the trans community are pretending, right? This is I worry that this is like to a smokescreen, right? What the government is saying is that people who identify as a gender that is not the one that they were born with, right? Can use a bathroom that's in line with the gender that they identify.
And I agree with
right?
that.
Which is different from saying like people who put on different clothes. Those are
Anybody
not the
could do
same
that regardless of the bill. Anybody
Correct.
could dress up as a woman and go use the women's
You don't
bathroom,
even got to
pretending
dress
to be
up,
a
though,
woman
but that's my
anyway,
point.
bill or not.
Why the U.S. government is saying that you don't even have to dress up.
But the government, I think,
in the
is
bathroom right now, stand there with women and be like, hey, it's cool.
Well, you should feel
I
awkward around a
identify
bunch of
as a
women if
transgender.
you're a
yeah,
man.
but you should.
But there's sickos
but
out
you
here that
wouldn't
would do that.
Yeah, but the law has not. The law makes that no more applicable than it already was. Yeah, just like
Right.
Angela said.
Anybody can do that anyway.
Right. And
if you did that now, just as a man, as a pervert walking in the bathroom, somebody's going to call somebody
It's
on you
opened
anyway.
up a different door, man.
I don't think.
think so.
I think that is what people want us to believe. They want us to believe that this like fight for equity is dangerous. It's what people said about the gay community.
Like
Right?
it's on the news right now. Bathroom battle heats up.
Right, and you're like, people said about gay people that if you let gay people adopt, it's gonna lead to and that's fear mongering.
It is.
Like that's not real, and we have to have these conversations in public so we can help people think through them differently.
I agree.
Because I think what Loretta Lynch did, I think what the Department of Education did was say we acknowledge that identity is really complex, and we know that the way you express your identity, that should be safe for you, right? And that you should be safe in bathrooms, you should be safe at home, you should be safe everywhere you go. And I think that's what the law does. I don't think it does any more than that. And I do think that the movement space, our conversations about blackness have opened up a chance for us to talk about this in public.
You know why it's hard to have the conversation? Because, like, if I have the conversation, oh, you're transphobic. Why? Just because I don't necessarily agree with this situation. To me, it has nothing to do with transgenders. I'm not even thinking about transgenders or transsexuals when I'm having this conversation. Whatever they were doing before, continue to do. I'm worried about just regular, everyday sickos who are going to take advantage of the law.
They'll still do that anyway.
Yeah, I think that the challenge is
they're
like...
going to still do that regardless of a bathroom bill or not.
That don't make it right.
I'm saying, but the bill has nothing to
not
do
only
with
does it
that.
not make it right, it opens it up.
But I think that what Angela said is fair, right? Is that I think that if somebody potentially calls you transphobic, it is probably about the spirit with which you engage. Like, you know, are you making statements? Are you asking questions about these things? And I think that what Angela said is right. Is that like if people are gonna do damage in bathrooms, outside of bathrooms, like this law actually has nothing to do with that. Like the law doesn't make it more permissible or less permissible.
Because people would do it anyway.
They were going to do it anyway. And then in terms of identity.
I'm going to tell you the difference. Before, if a man walked into a woman's bathroom, I'm going to be like, what the hell are you doing? Now, I may have to bite my tongue because he may identify as a woman. Regular looking guy like me. Now I just have to sit back and be like.
But identity.
Come on, DeRay.
You know, identity is more complex than that. And I think yes. And, you know, I'd encourage you to, if you've not already, you know, sit down with members of the trans community and like have these conversations about how safety is so important when people think about their identity, especially when it comes to bathrooms in other parts of America. And I think about myself as someone who learned so much by talking to people in communities that I'm not necessarily a part of.
Right. I have a lot of trans friends and they get attacked regularly, and I would hate for them to have to use the men's bathroom because they were born a man, and now
we're not talking. Once again, for me personally, I'm not talking about transgenders.
But the law
and
would pertain
transsexuals.
to them also. Then,
and like again, what are people doing in bathrooms
that they identify with?
But you're saying you don't want that because of the
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is I don't think that the U.S. government should have made a big announcement about it. Whatever transgenders and transsexuals were doing before, cool. North Carolina did the transgenders an injustice by putting a target on their back, by making them have to show ID and things of that nature. And the U.S. government made it even worse by saying, hey, you can use the bathroom that you identify with. Now, sickos could possibly take advantage of it. That's all I'm saying.
But you're linking the two, right? Like it is, you know, I don't know a different way to say it, that like it is what's happening in bathrooms. Like I don't think people are going into bathrooms and like throwing parties and giving out cards. Like it's not a social. Yeah, you know, it's like people are going to the bathroom and like going to the bathroom and then they're leaving the bathroom.
Right.
And how do we make sure people are safe in those experiences, I think is what this is saying. And I think the government is saying that there is a basic level of equality that people deserve.
If you're trying to molest me while I'm taking a in the bathroom, then you have way bigger issues than it.
Right. But that's not about identity. That's not about people's identity. People are going to do that regard. Like people who have those challenges, like that's not whether they're trans or not.
All I'm saying
man would do that to another man in the bathroom.
All I'm saying is it makes it less suspicious. Like 2 weeks ago, it was a story of this guy, he strangled an 8-year-old girl in the woman's bathroom. All I'm saying is it makes it less suspicious for a man to walk in the woman's bathroom. That's it. Simple and plain.
And now I wanted to move on from that, and I wanted to ask you about just you dealing with everything with Black Lives Matter. Does it sometimes get depressing for you just to watch all these different news stories and see the results and the outcome? You know, we all watched the story of Marshawn, who took his own life and said it was just the weight of everything that was going on around him, and he couldn't take it anymore.
Yeah, that was heavy.
How do you deal with all the pressures and watching everything happen and all the injustices weighing on you?
Yeah, so I'm mindful that I'm one of many people in this space, right? Mm-hmm. And I have incredible friends. I think about the crew that I'm closest to is like Netta, who you know, and Sam, who does so much of the data that we do, and Brittany, who's on the President's Task Force. And, you know, I'm thankful for my friends and their love and how we show up and are able to lean on each other and say, like, I need help. This is hard today. You know, one of the hardest things about social media, right, is that especially with Twitter, you have to consume it by the time I block you, right? So you've called me everything. Like, I've already read it, so I can block you now, but I've already taken it in.
It's like purging.
Right, like I've already taken it in. And, like, that gets hard because I believe in the platform. I love it. But I blocked 19,000 people, right?
And I think you can't understand why people feel the way.
Like, why are you so mad?
Yeah, it's crazy.
I think, and I get death threats, and I think I was doing the screening for the Panthers documentary in Baltimore, and somebody tweeted in that they were going to shoot me, and you know, then they came and they evacuated the movie theater, and there was like this whole thing, and I don't get afraid myself, but like the people around me get really freaked out by those things.
Do you believe in God?
I do believe in God.
Good.
Yeah. So that has been really powerful. And prayer, there were some moments, I ran for mayor, and there were some moments that were just really tough because as a candidate, when the negative press came, I couldn't necessarily respond immediately. I just had to sort of take it. And there were some hard days where like prayer was what got me to tomorrow,
right.
And like that's real.
Because it has to be difficult when you see everything going. It is depressing sometimes to see everything that's going on in the world, and then to get that feedback from people on Twitter, and you're like, I can't understand how people have so much hatred.
Yeah, you're like, and the police. I didn't kill anybody. The police are killing people. The police killed somebody every day, but 18 days in 2015 in all 50 states. That is wild.
And you're wrong for saying, for speaking out.
You mad at me? I didn't kill anybody. When I think about Freddie Gray wasn't a threat to the police. The police were a threat to Freddie.
Yeah, I saw Megyn Kelly pressing you about that. She said, "Do you what did the cop do?" Like she kept asking you, "What did the cop do wrong?" And then she cut you off.
And then she cut me up. And it's like, Megyn, here's the thing: is that like what the judge said in that case and so many other cases is that as a matter of law, that there was no crime. The judge didn't say that he was not involved. Mm-hmm. The judge didn't say that there was no responsibility in any capacity. He said that like as a matter of these laws. And what that was to me was that we need to address the laws, right? That the laws actually have to hold police officers accountable. You think about in places like Maryland, the officers have a 5 to 10 day waiting period before they have to give a statement. If you get arrested right now, you don't have a 5-day grace period.
At all.
That's wild. In cities across the country, there are time limits on how long you can get interrogated, like 30 minutes, 1 hour. Then you have the right to a bathroom break, phone call. You're like, that is nobody who gets arrested has those protections, right?
Gotcha.
And like structurally, the system is guaranteeing that officers won't be held accountable. And that's, in Baltimore, you can still hog tie and chokehold people. That's wild. That doesn't make sense to me.
What is Campaign Zero?
So Campaign Zero is a comprehensive platform to end police violence. This idea that we can actually live in a world where there's zero police killings. Like we believe that. It's a 10-point plan. It's what we used when we met with Bernie and Hillary, when we met with Loretta Lynch and Valerie Jarrett and President Obama. And importantly, it's saying that it's not any one of these things. So yes, we need independent investigators. Yes, we need independent prosecutors. Yes, we need body cameras. But we also need fair police union contracts. We need use of force policies that explicitly call for the preservation of life. Mm-hmm. And we need all of these things together. Mm-hmm. And there's some interesting things happening. We created the first public database of police union contracts, the first public database of use of force policies. And you think about body cameras, which a lot of people don't want, right? Some people don't want. Because they think that it's going to be a new form of surveillance in black communities, right? That like all of a sudden, if every officer has like a camera walking around the neighborhood, like that's actually really problematic. And what we would say is that there are ways to put protection so that footage is not used against people unnecessarily. And there's some interesting research happening that is using the audio from the body cameras. Mm-hmm. That what if we could actually test for aggression in officers? So like if you yelled all day, we could actually like test that before you killed somebody and we needed the footage. Mm-hmm. And like I think that we are just in the beginning stages of seeing what technology can do to hold police officers accountable and help communities be safe.
Why would it be problematic for cops that walk around with cameras?
Well, there's some people who, imagine in your neighborhood, right? If there in a lot of black neighborhoods, there are already police officers, right? Mm-hmm. Who are just there. But imagine if they just had a camera and they're standing on the corner and they're just taking continuous footage, right? That what they could do is go back, call through the footage, and like arrest you 3 weeks later for any random thing you did.
Well, you shouldn't have been doing a crime. Like you won't have a problem if you're not committing a crime.
We also shouldn't live in a surveillance state, right?
We do though.
Yeah,
Snapchat, World Star, Instagram
and I do feel like there are a lot of cameras.
But imagine if you just had but you would not want to live in a world where you are filmed at every moment.
This is my thing. We do live in this kind of world where we're filmed at every moment.
But you're not.
Okay, 80% of the time, right?
Well, some people want their 20%.
But
that's true, and 80% of these people are recording themselves already doing crimes. Go look at World Star.
Well,
that's different than the police.
Turning on the cameras when the police are about to stop somebody or question somebody, then being required to turn them on.
Which is different than like, what
that makes sense.
What's going to stop an officer from literally just standing on a corner,
right?
Like an undercover officer and just like videotaping at what point do we say like people actually do have a right to some sort of privacy? Mm-hmm. I think that's like a fair question.
Right. That's what I tell people every time they pull out their phones when it's an accident. Could you call 911 and help instead of trying to record it for your Snapchat?
It's different than the police. The police, if people thought the police had a lot of integrity across the country, I think this would be a different story. But we've seen cases where the police like don't do things with integrity, and I think that rightly worries people that they'll have this huge database of footage, you know, that they can
Right, like people don't want to have their fingerprints. They don't want to. I mean, people do want some privacy.
We don't.
And you could get arrested for real. You know, we think about all the people in protests that got arrested for like refusal to obey, right? Which was not like, what was the crime? Like I didn't cross the street when you told me to. Like, that's wild that people are sitting in jail for. You know, I worry that people look back at August of 2014 and they think that we marched in solidarity with the 60s, right? That marching was really cool. It was illegal to stand still in August, you know? In St. Louis, it was illegal to stand still. It was called the 5-second rule, that if you stood still for more than 5 seconds, you were arrested. And
Man, it's like y'all playing basketball.
That's
3-second rule.
wild, right?
Yeah, imagine
Lane
they want to
violation.
arrest you and then they get some footage of you jaywalking.
Right, and then you're in
like,
jail
okay,
for
we
2
went
weeks
through-
for the 5-second rule that they made up that was deemed unconstitutional later. But like, we lived that, you know? So our skepticism is like real.
I agree with everything you're saying, but I feel like we record way more than the police do.
Yeah, which doesn't mean that it's right for the police to do more.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, you tweeted out that I missed the community we had in 2014. What did that mean?
You know, there was, what you didn't see on TV was like the beautiful way that people came together in August and September and October 2014. That there was like a woman who came out with her grill every day and like made hot dogs and hamburgers for the protesters. There was like a cleanup crew at like 3 o'clock in the morning that would come clean. Like, that was just so beautiful. And I think that, you know, over time, I think some of that, we've lost it a little bit. And I'm hopeful that will reemerge in a different way. That there was something so visceral about the intensity of the police in August of 2014, September, that like made us all come together. And I hope that can happen again. I think that people, sometimes we
Under
don't,
better circumstances, though.
under better circumstances. And we don't always agree. I mean, like, you know, I think about many people in the movement who I don't agree with or don't agree with me. But we know that we're all fighting for the same outcome, right? Like, we all want a world that's like more just,
Right.
that like is better for Black people, like, you know, stuff like that.
Why does it seem like people do only care when something happens? Like, it's the initial situation, and then it's like the verdict that drives people crazy. But like, in between, what's going on?
Something's always happening, though.
Yeah. You think about it, took us 9 months to help people understand that this is a crisis all across the country. So when Mike got killed, people were like, okay, St. Louis is really a problem. They weren't like, oh, America is struggling. But it was the death of Freddie, Sandra Bland, and Walter Scott that people were like, okay, something's
This is an
wrong
epidemic.
all across the country, right? And then we help people see that there were real solutions. So Campaign Zero and other organizations like help push that there were solutions. I think the next part of the work, there are 2 things that come next. One is our ability to build coalitions. Like, can we create entrances to the movement for people who might not have the same goals but have the same outcomes? We think about people like you. Your biggest asset in the movement might not be you out in the middle of the street, right? But there are other ways that you can totally be involved.
The platform, bring guys like you up.
And like, how can we actually like help you? You know, if you know the governor, skip the street, call the governor, right? Like, how do we help people think about different ways of being involved? And the second is about, can we be as organized on the inside as we are on the outside, right? Like, an outside-only strategy, I don't think is a strategy to win. I mean, it's one of the reasons why I ran for mayor. But we have to start thinking about like how to be organized on the inside, because the people we're up against are the Tea Party made a little bit of noise and then won all the elections, right? Like, they understood that the inside had to be a part of the strategy.
So
That's
we
why
gotta
I
be
like
part
you.
of the infrastructure.
I like you because you're always trying to come up with solutions. And the one reason I don't like hashtag activism is because people just tweet problems all day long. But what are you actually trying to do? Like, you're out there on the front lines as an activist, and you tried to run for mayor, which I think is dope.
I appreciate it. Yeah, and you know, the thing about hashtag activism, and I'll never critique it because I know that like we aren't born woke, right? Something wakes us up. And for so many people, it was seeing things on Twitter, right? It was like you seeing Mike's body. It was you watching that video. And there's, you know, truth telling is like real work. And I think that is like the beginning of it for people. But yeah, we got to talk about the solutions. I worry in the movement space that there's some people more addicted to fighting than winning, right? That like people's identity gets rooted in this like,
That's real.
this like struggle forever. And like that is,
Right.
you know, as somebody who's been tear gassed in many places, like I don't want to do that again.
They practice being a victim, basically.
Not even practicing the victim.
They just enjoy the whole let's all come together, struggle and fight, but then they don't want to not have to fight.
It's like Wile E. Coyote chasing
what are we
the
fighting
Roadrunner.
for?
Right. What are we fighting?
Now, let
What's
me
the
ask you
outcome?
this. For the average person that wants to get involved, but they don't know what to do or how do I, like, they're just sitting at home. They're like, I really want to do something, but I don't know where to start. What advice would you give them?
So this is, the 2 questions we get all the time are like, what can I read? What can I do? Right. This will be, the first answer will be one that'll probably frustrate you. The second one will be more concrete. The first is that most people know, like, have an idea of like how the world could be better, like their school, their community, whatever it is. And that what organizing is saying like, I think something can be better. Let me find some people who might believe that too and let us do something. Like that at its root is what it means to organize. And I worry that people think that they need to join an organization or to do that, and like they don't. Like you can actually do that where you are. And that's how you build power. Like when we think of the protests in Ferguson, no 1, 2, or 3 people started it. I didn't start it. Like people came outside. They were like, Mike's body is here. This is wrong. And they stayed, right? And like, that's what it means to organize. I would say people can go to joincampaign0.org, which is our platform around like solutions and what that looks like. And there's so many other organizations out across the country, like in cities that are doing really good work that they can partner with. But if you don't want to join an organization, you can do it. You can like start where you are, and that's so real.
Right.
Why don't you think you were able to sway voters in Baltimore?
The election was an 83-day election, so it was short. When I announced, there was no clear front runner, and I learned so many things during the election. This is actually probably my first interview.
Are you going to run again?
I don't know. I'm still. It's like a month. I'm just a month out of it. What we did do that was really powerful. Bernie's fundraisers were my fundraisers. We raised more money during that period than almost every local election in the country. One of the only local campaigns that raised money from all 50 states, and importantly had the third highest number of donors from Baltimore City. And we raised more money on Twitter than even Bernie can. So that was really powerful. I think one of the things that just wasn't to my advantage was time.
Gotcha.
That I put in February. The closest person to me put in the November before that.
Right.
So they just had like a much
head
more
start.
time. I do also think that one of the consequences of having a big social media platform is people felt like if I wasn't tweeting it, it wasn't real. So like in the last 30 days, we knocked 20,000 doors, made 20,000 calls, mailed to 40,000 homes. But like if I didn't tweet that, people thought I was like just sitting at home, on Twitter. And that was sort of hard.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I think the time was it. And, some people had ostensibly been running for like 2 years. Right. And like it proved to be much harder to build the name ID in the city in 2-3 months, competing against people who've been running for 2 years.
Yeah,
Do you think that what you say?
Oh no, I was saying I could see why.
Yeah.
Do you think that you could have gotten more done as an activist or as a politician?
Well, I'm an activist now, so I think that like people always will have to push from the outside. There has to be it, no matter who's in office. I think that inside like actually helps us do the work that we know needs to be done. In Baltimore, we think about a city where 40% of adults cannot functionally read. You think about 25% of our pre-K students are chronically absent. They miss 20 days or more. That's why these are real problems. And as mayor, I would have been able to like actually do the concrete things and just do it. We don't need to fight about it. We don't need to protest. Like I could just do it. As an activist, it's about, again, pushing to say, here are the things that need to happen. Like in Baltimore, we can end money bail. Like we don't have to have money bail. DC ended it 20 years ago. The world didn't end. So it's about like pushing that. And in Baltimore, me and one of the people I ran against, we will actually be launching an organizing coalition soon because the work didn't end when the campaign ended. Like the city is still the city and we still care about it.
Were you afraid to be a part of the system? Like you think maybe the system could change you in some way?
No, I was a senior leader in 2 public school systems. So in Baltimore, I was the number 2 human capital. So I managed the day-to-day of like human resources. We had 12,000 employees, 7,000 kids. And in Minneapolis, I did that work too. So I know what it's like to be a part of the system. And if anything, I learned that like the weeds is the work, like people take for granted, like the forms you fill out have a huge impact on the decisions that can be made, like the way we collect data, that sort of stuff. So I believe in the institutional work. And I do think that, when we met with President Obama in February, we had a clear conversation with him about like the beginning of the work is like acknowledging the crisis. Then it is helping people see what solutions are. The last 2 parts are the hardest, right? It's like institutionalize the change, like make it a part of the system. And then it's protect the change that you've made. Because the worst is like you get some really cool law passed that's important. And then the next week they like repeal it, right? Like that's us not doing a good job protecting it. So I believe that the institutional work is like what it has to be.
Where do you stand with the candidates? Because black people hate Hillary for it.
Did y'all endorse anybody?
Not yet. I like Bernie. I like everything Bernie stands
for. But you voted.
Jersey hasn't voted yet. I'm in Jersey.
Oh, you're in Jersey.
Yeah, I'm registered in Jersey also.
But I'm
changing mine.
I like Hillary too, though. I like Hillary because I like what she could represent. I got 2 daughters. My daughter's 7. All my daughter saw was Barack Obama, black man. Now she'll be able to see a woman, and I feel like she's the most experienced as far as White House experience is concerned.
How'd your other daughter?
9 months.
Oh, she's like a baby.
She's a baby. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So I kind of like.
I'm
Hillary.
very torn. Also, I like Bernie Sanders, but I do feel like a lot of things that he wants to do, I'm not that confident that he can make it happen. I look at all the things that President Barack Obama wanted to do that couldn't happen. And while I might be like, that's very great that he wants to do that, I think Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders together would be great.
That ain't happening.
Yeah, I think that, so we met with both of them. I think that Bernie, Bernie, y'all met with Bernie.
Absolutely.
Bernie, he shows up in person just like he does on, he's like, you're like,
Right.
okay, Bernie, I love it. I think that Bernie has importantly covered a set of issues about race that,
I agree.
we've not seen a presidential candidate cover before. And I think that the movement and the protests pushed him to do that.
Like they've been forced to acknowledge systemic racism.
Huge.
I've never heard that come out of their mouth ever until now.
Bernie's talking about the racial wealth gap, stuff that you're like, what president? Who's doing this? So I think that's powerful. I think that you're right. The skepticism about Bernie are two things. One is how, right? Like you've covered a huge range. How are you going to do it? And then what are your priorities, right? Because he's covered so much. It's like, well, this will be a game of tell me what's more important to you. And I don't think he's done a good job of helping people see that. But he has covered an important range. I think that Hillary, on the flip side, was slow to cover anything, right? She put out her racial justice platform late, and I think that's hard. So people question her sincerity. It's just do we have to keep protesting you to make you acknowledge black people?
Gotcha.
I think that's real. What she has put out, though, it's really deep. So her plans are a little more concrete than Bernie's.
I feel like Hillary Clinton is realistic in what she can accomplish. I understand people have issues with her because of her past and things that have happened and things that Bill Clinton has done. I feel like they definitely hold.
Bernie signed that too, though.
They definitely hold Hillary Clinton responsible.
And Super Predator, the Super Predator comment was bad. Yeah, I think that I worry that Hillary, and we said this to her when we met with her, that I think I worry about the Democrats in general. I think people don't realize that I think a lot of people are not going to vote, or people feel like they're not going to vote, not because they're uninformed or because they don't care, but they feel like them not voting is actually them withholding their consent from a system that is bad. And I think that if the Democrats want black young people to vote, they'll have to make a much better case for why you voting isn't validating a system that hasn't ever cared, or people feel like it has not cared about.
Are you voting?
I voted. Yeah.
Who'd you vote for? Or you can't say.
He doesn't want to say.
I'm being neutral.
So why are you supporting Trump, DeRay?
Yeah, right. Trump has done such a good job of convincing white people that they are the most marginalized people in America.
Right.
I mean, it's brilliant.
Poor white people.
A demo of white people. Those poor white. I call them poor white down south. Those poor white trash down south. Nobody ever talks to them. So he's convinced them that they've been marginalized. When in reality, they're just a waste of good white skin because they have every opportunity to be great.
We had a debate here on whether or not people should go and actually rally against Trump at his rally.
What was the conclusion?
Well, I think it's an important thing to do still. Charlamagne thinks, why would you go? Because you're going to get beat
I don't
up
like
and
seeing
you
my
already
people
know what the
getting beat
outcome
up.
is.
Well, white people got beat up yesterday in
Right.
what, Idaho, maybe?
Who
At the
beat them
Trump
up?
rally.
The Trump rally.
What you mean? It was black people there that beat white people up?
No, white people protested.
They were
Trump,
protesting.
Oh.
and they got beat up yesterday.
Well,
I think it is important to go and protest, though.
Listen, we know Trump supporters are crazy.
Yeah.
Why go in the lines then? Just show up in the polls in November and vote against him.
It's funny, though, because I remember when people weren't going to the Trump rallies and people were like, Black Lives, the activists are afraid of Trump. And then people went and they were like, y'all are wild. Why are you going? It's like, we can't win. It was like we were afraid of the Republicans.
Right.
And then people went and they were like, I can't believe you're just doing this for attention. And it's like, okay. Trump, it'll be interesting to see what happens with him. I think that Trump will implode at some point. And the question, though, is how do we make sure that we aren't collateral damage to the implosion?
Gotcha.
He's done to the Republican Party what the Democrats never could do. The fact that he's broken up Breitbart.
Yeah.
The Republican National Committee, they're spinning to death right now. They're unmoored. He has damaged the Republicans in a way that the left could only dream about. The question is, how do we make sure we all don't get damaged in his fallout?
Even Republicans that don't support him are like, okay, I guess we have to because he's our candidate now, so we're behind Trump.
And he's bullying them all.
Right.
Into, it's incredible what he's done to the Republicans in terms of weakening the position that they used to have. It'll be interesting to see, though. Who do you think will be Hillary's running mate?
I
Listen,
heard it's going to be the
secretary,
Spanish guy from San Antonio, I think.
Castro.
I don't remember his name. I know he's from.
I would
San
hope
Antonio.
that she would pick Bernie Sanders. That would be
Do
incredible.
you think she will, though?
Nah, that's
Do you
not
think
her.
that he'll go? His rhetoric has become much more intense recently.
I think
felt
Bernie
like he softened and then he got more intense.
Bernie
It
should
felt
be
like
on
when
her
he
team,
didn't think
but I
that he
don't
had
think she'd
a
be
chance.
VP.
But that would make a huge statement to me.
It'd be
That would
great.
be.
It would be big. I don't know if he'll. I agree with you. I don't think he'll do it.
Nah. I see you tweet about pop culture a lot. Is that what keeps your mind off everything else?
Yeah, I'm black. I'm black, and it's So I too, Jay-Z's. What's the
All the Way Up remix?
Yes, All the Way. I feel like I'm 80 years old. I'm like, what's that song?
What's that song?
What's that song?
With the Jigga Boy on it.
Right. What's that? Like Kiki Palmer. Did you see the video? Kiki is like, when she's like, what's Jay-Z's real name?
Sean Carter. Yeah.
Like, video. Have you seen the video?
No, I haven't seen it.
You got to see it. She literally is like, I didn't know his name. You're like, okay, Kiki. Anyway, so that song came out, and he has a line that says, survival of the littest.
Survival of the littest.
So I think that blackness is really complex, and culture is a part of it. And I'm black. It's real to me on Twitter, and it's real to me in the world.
They just put you in. I feel like they want to put you in a box. Oh, you're an activist. You can't talk to Azalea Banks. You can't tweet about Beyonce.
Azalea. Yeah, I get that a lot less now than I used to.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
At the beginning, it would be like, DeRay, Drake dropped some song, and I said something, and people were like, go back to protest. And you're like, okay. Now I think, we've all grown a little bit more, but I'm all about it. Yeah, and I think that that's like true to what it means to be black, right? That like we can struggle, that like we are more than our pain.
Balance, man.
That like people want black people to always be hurt and damaged and upset, and like we are hurt and frustrated, but we also have this deep sense of joy, and that has allowed us to survive and thrive in the most unlikely conditions. And I'm a part of that. You're a part of that. Like we're all a part of that together. And I think it's important that people see that like you don't have to be like I'm not angry all day.
Yeah.
I'm like mad every time the police kill somebody, and every time these wild, like Louisiana, Lord. In Louisiana, they're introducing that Blue Lives Matter bill that's going to potentially make attacking a police officer a hate crime. Like that stuff makes me angry.
But is it anger or justified rage? I like to call it justified rage.
I'm okay with justified rage.
Yeah,
I think that's fair. I mean, we have a lot to, if black people were vengeful, if we were asking for revenge and not justice, this would be a different conversation.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
So people should be thankful that this is a conversation about justice.
Anger leads to revenge. Justified rage makes you want to seek justice.
Yeah, this is about justice for people. And I do think that like we have to start talking about things like, people don't want to talk about reparations. I think the word reparations is like a lightning rod for people, as opposed to just saying like this is about acknowledging and repair, right? We need to acknowledge like this deep history of trauma and figure out how to repair it. And I think that is actually like a more real thing, that like the racial, the average savings in retirement for black people is like $0. Like it literally is like we have to talk about the racial.
I
wealth
agree
gap.
with that.
Things like that, like people confuse income with wealth. I made $110,000 before I quit. I had a high income and no wealth, right? Like I had no real assets, like, and people.
You had 110 saved up from teaching, or?
No. So I was a senior director of human capital. I managed all staffing for the school district.
Gotcha.
That was my salary. But that was like a high income. That wasn't wealth, White people have wealth. They like own land. They
and
own
I feel like
property,
people
they
are
own
very nervous to do things like invest or even discuss it. They think it's not for them. I had a discussion with somebody the other day, and I was talking to her about the stock market and starting businesses, and it was something that she was really nervous about, that she never learned about, and it is something that we need to. You can educate yourself on that.
And like, what happens when you don't come from a legacy of people, like a family of people who've done that?
Right.
So you think I know so many white families that they come from like long lines of people who've owned property, who started businesses, and like that isn't always either the stories that we have lived or the stories that you've heard about, and we got to start doing that.
Right. I definitely listen. My family, they don't have any type of history with that. I never learned that growing up, but we have so much access to information that there's no reason to not educate yourself on those things.
And then how do we use platforms like this to like do it? You think about reading, I'm a third generation reader. That my great grandmother could only sign her name, Like, and you think about like I don't know what generation reader you are, but like it means something to not come from like 5 generations of people who like could actually read and comprehend text, Like that matters when we think about this work.
Do you I know a lot of people like because like you get money to like just keep going, just like to be on the road and stuff like that. And I've heard people say, well, DeRay steals money.
DeRay.
My bad. DeRay steals money. Like, how do you feel about that?
Yeah. So it's interesting. I get a lot of things, right? That I'm like sponsored by Spotify, Twitter, Doritos,
Tidal.
Wells Fargo. I don't actually get Tidal. So I get a lot of those things. And the reality is that it was savings. When I speak places, I'll get like an honorarium, and I'm able to keep the costs really low. Like I pay for like food and Uber, right? Like I wear.
You've been wearing that vest for
the
4
same
years
thing
straight.
for a long time, so I'm not buying new
90
clothes.
degrees, by the way, also.
It was not 90 when I walked in. It was a cool 70. I don't know what it'll be when I leave. But yeah, I don't have like a ton of expenses. So I don't. The money rumors are interesting. I get a lot of rumors. There's this rumor that I'm in the Illuminati. The Illuminati has a Wikipedia page. If you don't know, there's like a
do
whole.
They?
So I have an entry in the Illuminati wiki.
Well,
which is
congratulations!
great. I know. I'm really proud of that. So like there are a lot of rumors, and there are people in the movement who've gotten, money from foundations and things like that, and that is important for people to sustain their work. That isn't what we've done. But I do get like an incredible, Dove soap. I don't even remember. So I use, I tried. This is the first time I publicly talked about this since it happened on Twitter. But I tweeted one day like I use Dove soap because like I don't know why. I was like I use Dove soap.
You wash DeRay?
People were like literally like you use white soap. You cannot be.
Get out of here.
No, I lie to you not. Dove soap trended for like 15 hours, and it was like wild. And it was like, okay, I use white soap. So now we
Thank
joke
goodness
like,
you didn't say Ivory.
Right. Now it's like I don't talk about soap. I don't talk about the brand of lotion I use. I don't talk about the flavor of ice cream because it becomes this like thing.
How dare you like vanilla ice cream?
Yeah.
Right, I know. I don't. No comment about vanilla ice cream. But people get really. I don't know. Maybe it's because of the civil rights movement. Like they feel like people sold them out. But like that's not what we're doing. And we have, tried to do all of our stuff in public, right? Mm-hmm. And that there's been an interesting backlash that we get with that. That like the only reason you can criticize most of the things we do is because like we told you we did it, right?
Right.
So I'm not sneaking to the White House. Like I said, I was there. Like I'm not sneaking. And it's been interesting to try and be really transparent about these things, and then people like use that against you. So we did a fundraiser during the campaign here in New York City. I used to live in New York City. I have friends here. BuzzFeed wrote a story being like, DeRay Mckesson has fundraiser at ex-banker's house in New York. And you're like, first it was that I was a millionaire stealing money from the movement. Mm-hmm. That wasn't true. We needed to raise money. And then it's like, DeRay needs to raise money scandal. And you're like, well, y'all, I can't win. Like, this is wild.
Yeah, it bugged me out. I saw somebody that was getting at nothing when you and Sean was having the whole thing. And it was like, we gave you $750 to go interrupt Al Sharpton. And I'm like, what's wrong with that? Like, I didn't understand what the problem was.
So that was a former writer, and that
Dream.
That was.
Oh, you don't want to say her name? I'm sorry.
That was
shady. That was shady.
That was untrue. That was an untrue statement.
Yeah.
That nobody pays us to do this work.
Yeah.
And the former writer, supported Netta in Netta's first trip to the White House.
But that's what I thought. I thought the money was like, yeah, get a plane ticket.
Yeah.
Gas, food, when you get there. Like, I didn't think nothing of it. I'm like, okay, you have $750 to go to Washington.
Yeah. But it wasn't about it. Those are two different dates. Netta's decision to address Al at that moment was a decision she made that day.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't people. It's interesting to see people tell untruths to further their own agenda in this space, especially when it should be a space where we're like deeply rooted in what's true. Right? That this is about like the truth that there's state violence and we need to come together to fight it.
You think some of it may be jealousy? Because you seen that on the front of Ebony magazine, or was it Essence? Essence magazine. You're on Colbert Show. You think a lot of times they're like, why are they getting all this shine? And we've been out here protesting for years as well.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not going to hypothesize where it comes from. I do know that I think I can speak for Netta, I can speak for myself, is that like we feel confident that we go to sleep every night with our integrity intact. Mm-hmm. And any challenges that we've had with people, we address, or we're open to having conversations with people. We do know that people confuse visibility sometimes with so many things, like
they see you on TV. Oh, he got money now.
Yeah, and you're like, no, I'm broke, right? Like this is.
Oh, he's trying to be famous. Like Malcolm X wasn't all over TV. Like Martin Luther King Jr. wasn't on TV. Like,
and I'm coming here. Like we had I think we had an important conversation about transphobia in the bathroom bill, right? That like that I'm in places talking about black. I'm on Colbert talking about white privilege on network television, right? Mm-hmm. That it's not what I'm not doing is saying like, hello, Colbert, please tell your people to follow me on Twitter, right? Like, that's not what it is. And I think about any time that I've been with influencers or celebrities, like we're talking about like how we can be closer in the work, right? Like how can you use your platform to like further conversations about equity and justice? Mm-hmm. Like that's what we're doing,
So what is the Black Lives Matter movement's ultimate goal?
Yeah, so again, the movement is many people working on many things. Importantly, they are leaders all across the country working at the local, state, and federal level. I think at the most basic level, it is about addressing, confronting, and changing state violence and institutionalizing those changes. So the most visceral manifestation of that is about the police, and that is what got people on the street. It's what kept people on the street. You think about, I've heard recently people like downplay protest or, and it's like in St. Louis, there was like over 100, 200 days of continuous protest. That has not happened in our lifetime like it happened there. And the police violence is what got people in the streets. The police killed 10 people after Mike Brown. So it wasn't, Mike, but like the police killed 10 people in St. Louis after Mike Brown. So wild. Mm-hmm. And then it is about opening up space to talk about the complexity of identity, to talk about other ways that state violence manifests, whether that's like education or housing. Like, it's about all of those conditions and changing them at the institutional level.
So what's DeRay's ultimate goal?
DeRay.
Jesus, what do I keep saying? What is DeRay's ultimate goal?
DeRay, didn't y'all just interview DeRay?
Yesterday, like 2 days ago.
There we go.
What's DeRay's ultimate goal?
I want to be in a position where we can actually do the things that change people's today and tomorrows, like that's important to me. I think that, in the movement, sometimes there's this schism between like reform and revolution. And people who say they're revolutionaries, it is about like sort of the 100-year goal, right? Like a third party, a different conception of capitalism. And I think that is really important, that we need to work towards that. We shouldn't work towards that at the expense of like the stuff that can actually make people's lives better today and tomorrow. Mm-hmm. I know people who are advocating and they want to get out of jail today and tomorrow, right? They don't want the 100-year solution to get out of jail. They want the today one. And I'm interested in like the solution work. So whatever I do next, like I want it to be like, how do we start talking about solutions in public? How do we continue to use public platforms like this to help people think about the world better?
Got you.
That's what I want to do.
Okay.
All right.
Well, we thank you so much for coming through.
Thank you.
DeRay.
DeRay. You want to have a drink?
DeRay
You don't drink, do
Mckesson.
you?
I don't drink.
Oh.
Let me ask you something. Light or dark liquor?
I don't drink.
Just want to make sure.
I don't drink.
Let's go buy him a vanilla
I'm
milkshake.
You better say brown.
I started drinking 3 years ago, and I only drank white wine. And one glass.
Oh,
I know.
no.
It's embarrassing.
DeRay.
Because both my parents were drug addicts. My father raised us. My mother left when I was 3, and we were afraid to drink, growing up. And I don't know, one day somebody gave me a glass of white wine, and that's all and one glass of white wine, and I'm like, done. So.
Okay.
White wine, Dove soap.
I know.
Who is DeRay? All right. Thank you for joining us, my
Thank
brother.
you. Good to be here.
Twitters and all that stuff, man.
It's DeRay, DeRay on Twitter. And on Instagram, it's I am DeRay.
All right. Thank you. It's The Breakfast Club.
The Breakfast Club. Every weekday morning. Tune in.